G'day there guys, how's it going? Markee here, back at it again with another episode of r/revenge. Now if you've got anyone you want to get revenge on, be sure to sit back, relax, and enjoy the quality content. Posted by user, a certain technician. Titled, Redneck thinks it's funny to yank out mailboxes, my dad makes him pay. Disclaimer, this happened a long time ago, but still makes me giggle to this day. So way back in the day, mid-90s or so, my family lived in a log cabin on 10 acres of land in a rural area, 10 minutes or so out of town. It wasn't totally the sticks, but you could definitely hear banjo music in the background sometimes. At the end of our nearly quarter-mile long driveway was one of those roads that was also technically a state highway, and in the AM, I'd trudge down to wait for the bus. When I got home, I'd grab the mail and carry it back. Until one Monday morning when I went out and noticed the mailbox was gone, and on closer inspection, looked like it had just been ripped out of the ground. Dad was obviously not pleased. He went out to talk with the county sheriff, who happened to live a mile down the road. Turns out it had been happening up and down the road for months. Someone was tossing a chain over mailboxes and yanking them out with their vehicle. He suspected a guy down the road with this great big lifted four-wheel drive truck, but couldn't prove anything. Usually happened on Saturday and Sunday nights with people finding out in the morning. Also, seems the nicer the mailbox, the bigger a target, and many had been hit multiple times. People had tried digging deeper, using more durable wood, etc., but the guy just took it as a challenge and ripped them out again. Soft, sandy ground, and his truck was a monster. Well, Dad said, challenge fudging accepted. A bit about my father. He's a steel worker with an engineering background and graduate degree, built like a bear with forearms the size of my frickin' legs. Some people looking at him would never think this monster of man is also brilliant, but he is. The calm, cool type that almost never loses his temper, but wrong him and God help you. So Dad goes to Lowe's and buys the fanciest, prettiest mailbox they sell. He then proceeds to install it on top of an 8-foot-long cylinder of 3-inch diameter hardened tool steel. But he wasn't done there. After digging down with post holers and dropping it in, he then filled it with the quickset concrete. To really sell it, he then used some strips of 1/2-inch wood to cover the steel core of his now indestructible mailbox of doom, primed and painted them so it looked like a standard 4-inch post. And even had my mum decorate it with flowers and such. He wanted it to be as tempting of a target as possible. Didn't even take a week. I went out for school in the morning and found the mailbox right where it should be. Attached to it was 30 foot of a chain and an entire hitch assembly, ripped right off the truck's frame, sheared the bolts. It was marvelous to behold. Sheriff gets called over and dies laughing when he sees it. He went to the house of the guy that was suspected and sure enough, verified the damage to his truck matched. Fun fact, messing with a mailbox is a federal crime, as in you go to federal prison, not those cushy state places. Dad was unofficially rewarded by the sheriff's department with a few cases of beer and some venison, and after that, every deputy in town would flash him a thumbs up whenever they saw him. Edit, apparently vandalism to mailboxes is far more common than I thought, and other people have taken similar measures. I guess great minds think alike. Edit 2, as many have commented, apparently federal prison is actually a lot better than state. Didn't know that, sorry. Posted by user, MeZoon. Titled, Roommate thought she was sneaky, ended up owing me $400 and got suspended. So this happened my second semester dorming at my college campus. I had met my roommate at orientation and could kind of already tell she was going to be a pain in my ass. And I was right about that. I had planned on moving rooms to be closer to some friends the next semester, but let me get to the story that led to my revenge. On our campus, you have to pay for meals using your student ID, which had a certain amount of money on it each semester. You could also use an app that you put your name and ID info into it, and it makes it easier to pay. But the name and ID must match for it to work, which will be important later. Any funds from the fall semester would roll over into the spring, but then at the end of spring it would just expire. Because of this, and because I only ate 1 or 2 a day, I had a ton saved up on my card. My roommate, on the other hand, did not. So I offered to pay for some of her meals from time to time in trade of her picking up the food for us, which involved her using my card twice in person, and then she'd return it. Then, one day, I noticed that on my app that my card was being charged even when I was not ordering food. And not just a meal, like a meal for several people. This meant that whoever was ordering, wonder who, either had to have stolen my ID card, which I had in my pocket when I got the charge, or was impersonating my info on the app, which are both big no-nos on my campus. I was quick to put two and two together and was pretty ticked. I was initially going to confront her on it, but decided to formulate a plan instead. That day I went and ordered a second ID card for $25 to use for later, as it took a couple of weeks to get the new one. I let her charge several things to my card over a good 2 weeks, for her and her friends, and she wasn't very good at hiding it either, as they would come to our dorm and eat, while I just screenshot and sent emails to the support team of the app about the charges, knowing nothing would get done until I contacted someone in person. And one day it got even better, as you can buy groceries with the card off campus as well. She decided to pay for alcohol with my card, which doesn't get pinged as an issue on my card due to me being over 21, but she was only 19. Not sure how she got it, but it was just the thing to finally act on my plan. I put my best sad face on and contacted the head of my campus living and head of my dorm about the charges on my account. I dropped some hints that it could be my roommates and mentioned how I got a new ID and asked what I should do. I was told to order a new card and once I got it, to deactivate my current ID and use the new one for purchases now, making my old ID have a balance of $0 and also to ping it if someone uses it to buy anything. They also told me they would be visiting my dorm to discuss the issue with my roommates. I accepted that and waited. They sent the confirmation email that they would be visiting, and I just decided to add more fuel to the fire. My roommate was groaning about not having the funds to pay for food in front of me in our dorm. I told her I really couldn't help her as I was running low on funds, and she kind of just laughed it off and left the room to probably go use my old ID. I deactivated my first card right after she left, and surprise, surprise, she used my info to pay. Except when she tried to pay for her and her friends this time, it was declined and it pinged that my ID was used. Campus security was called and she was escorted back to our dorm. Pretty much perfect timing for our meeting with campus living. She was scared crapless when they came to the dorm to talk and look through her stuff. On her phone, still logged into the app, was my ID information and name, and in her dorm closet was a half-full bottle of cheap vodka, and on my phone was a screenshot of said unauthorized vodka purchase. In the end, she was forced to pay me back all the funds she used in cash, reported for underage drinking, which automatically suspends you from campus living for at least a year, and would have on her record that she performed identity theft, which I also could have charged her for out of school. In the end, I got to have my own dorm for the remainder of that semester, and even part of the semester after, because it wasn't put as an available room for new dormers. I did get all my money back from her parents, who were so embarrassed and apologized profusely. And when she did eventually come back to campus, nobody wanted to dorm with her because they knew she had stolen her roommate's ID. I think in the end, she rented off campus. Posted by user Sugi0003, titled, "Steal my design and get all the credits? Enjoy getting kicked off." So my friend over in Korea studies fashion design. She sometimes sends me over the sketches of her designs and they all look amazing. Then again, I'm not into fashion. She is particularly interested in designing handbags and purses. She told me about a story about how she shut down one of the most entitled, self-centered, lazy students on campus. Our cast are Grace, our main girl, Jane, the evil one, and Professor, the instructor, of course. Story. At first, Grace and Jane got along just fine. They were both interested in similar stuff and quickly became BFFs. Grace decided to show Jane her sketches and designs for handbags and purses, and Jane was so impressed by it. Because the sketches were in incredible detail, including all the patterns and sew lines, coupled with figurative measurements. Even Professor was impressed by it, and it was no surprise that Grace got a high mark on their first major exam. Jane didn't do so well, and practically followed Grace everywhere to get pointers on how to do better. So, Grace decided to help her out. Unfortunately, Jane turned out to be one of the most entitled, lazy, and selfish people that Grace has ever met. Things that Jane did to pee Grace off included, but not limited to, not paying attention, being late on their study session, never showed appreciation, didn't pay for coffee or snacks, complaining annoyingly about how hard it was to draw something. Grace pretty much gave up on her after a week, refusing to meet Jane outside of class. Time went by, and for their midterm, everyone in the class had to do a presentation on the stuff they had designed. When it was Jane's turn, Grace was shocked to see Jane had stolen one of her designs. Thankfully, Grace had multiple designs going on, so there were no conflicts when it was her turn to present, but she was seething with rage. Grace had a meeting with the professor afterwards, and the professor knew what was going on, but couldn't really do anything with Jane because it turns out she was the daughter of the chairman, or one of the major investors. Grace said she can't recall. The chairman apparently blackmailed the professor into giving Jane the best grades. The revenge. Professor did, however, help Grace devise a plan to humiliate and expose Jane. For the finals, the professor announced to the class they would do another presentation, but it would be 3 designs and advised they had to bring their A-games because professionals from industries would be grading their work, and the head of the department and the chairman would be there as well. So you know how Grace had a bunch of sketches for the class? Well, Grace also had a separate sketchbook that had designs from major brands. MK, Coach, you name it. She never directly used these for class assignments, but rather as inspirations for her designs. Grace pretended to be all friendly with Jane again, and brought the other sketchbook on their meetings, still putting up with all the problems mentioned above. Grace secretly worked tirelessly on her new design, and did her best to keep it a secret from Jane. So the day of their final presentation arrives, and Grace and the professor are grinning because they know what is about to happen. Grace went first, and she got a lot of praise from the judges. After a few more presentations, the last one to go was Jane. Jane's presentation turned out to be another copycat, copying designs of not 1, not 2, but 3 different companies. After the presentation, this was how it all went down, at least according to Grace. Judge 1's like, "So, you're saying you designed all these by yourself, right?" "That's right. And you swear that it really was your design and you didn't copy off from everything else, right?" "I swear." "You are aware your designs are from 3 brands." "Huh? Are you aware that these are on market right now and some of the most popular designs?" "Wait, hold on. Yeah, I was going to bring this up. If you had worked for any brands, you would probably have been fired, or worst case, sued. But please, I'm not done yet. Did you honestly think this would work? We, the judges, have been in the industry for over 10 years. We know a copycat when we see it. But these aren't even my designs, they're from Grace." Judge 3 says to Grace, "Is this true?" "Well, yes, but I'd never use them for major projects, nor call them my work. I just use sketches of them as inspirations for my own designs." "Well, that was clear from your presentation." Turning back to Jane. "Now, Miss Jane, this is a clear case of plagiarism, and I do hope your school is merciful on this matter." After the presentation was over, the chairman screamed at the professor in front of everyone, not realizing he just revealed all the blackmailing and the secret grade deal. Jane tried to call out Grace on how "you screwed me over," but it really didn't matter. No one listened to Jane's attempts and slander, and was kicked out of the school. Chairman pretty much lost all support and had to resign, and was replaced by a far more honorable and competent one. Posted by user Arrow111, titled, "For everyone that yells Freebird at concerts. You know who you are. One of you is at every goddamn show. I used to tour with a band, and we had around 200 concerts a year. At least 200 times a year, someone would yell Freebird and laugh like they said something clever. I don't understand why it's funny, and hearing it every day for thousands of shows, yup, still not at all funny. So one day we tried to find out the deal. When the Freebird guy of the day yelled again, we invited him on stage to answer a few questions. Why do you yell Freebird? Because it's funny. Why is it funny? He doesn't say anything and has a look of confusion and shame. Okay, so we didn't get any answers, but we certainly came up with one. Nobody comes up with ridiculous ideas like a group of 20-somethings who spend 15 hours a day in a van together. First thing we had to do was buy a sampler. This is a small piece of equipment that you can pre-program with any sounds you want and press buttons to trigger them. They're pretty expensive. The one we bought for the prank was $1,200. Side note, we were staying all 5 members to a single hotel room every night and eating nothing but dollar menu garbage and ramen because even if your band is doing good, you're still broke. I just want you to understand how ridiculous it was for us to spend $1,000 on this. As far as I'm concerned, it was worth it 10 times over. The next thing we needed was a folding table with chairs for all of us, some teacups and a newspaper or two. We would set these up next to the stage and no one would even notice it was there. So we found a 16-minute long version of Freebird and loaded it onto the sampler. The trap was set up. Sure enough, someone yelled Freebird at the next show. This time, our lead singer acted really interested. "What's that you say? Freebird? Do you want to hear Freebird?" The audience cheers loudly. So just to be clear, you want us to stop playing our set and instead play Freebird. They cheer again in approval, and now the Freebird guy clearly looks like he's never been so proud of anything he's ever done in his life. We all stepped to the center of the stage in a very serious-looking huddle. We made it a point to go comically long discussing Freebird, and sometimes we would just talk about movies we liked for a while or make fun of each other's sisters. When we felt like it had gone on long enough, and we were terrible about making jokes go way too long, we all nodded and made it clear that we had just agreed to play Freebird. Alright folks, you asked for it. You got it. Here we go. Freebird. While the crowd went absolutely nuts, the singer went to the sampler and, like an old man fumbling to use a remote, he found the button and pressed it as anticlimactically as possible. Freebird begins to play, and we all put our instruments down and sit around the table. We sip on pretend tea and browse the newspaper quietly. At first, everyone thought it was hilarious. But after a few minutes, they started to revolt, chanting for us to come back and all. We would look at each other in a very confused manner and shrug it off a few times before the singer would finally go back to the mic. "What's going on? You don't want to listen to this anymore?" "No!" "You want us to play our stuff again?" "Yeah!" "Well, what about the guy who yelled Freebird?" "That guy sucks!" And then the booing would start for that poor Freebird guy. We did this for an entire tour, and it absolutely never got old. I'd like to think that after that year, tens of thousands of people stopped yelling Freebird at every show they go to. At least for me, that makes the world a slightly better place. Update, a lot of people are confused about spending so much on a sampler when there are CD players and iPods. We were doing arena venues, and iPods were only like 2 years old at the time. You wouldn't tell a sound crew to hook one of those up to $1 million system. They are the guys who can get some serious pro revenge if you pee them off. Posted by user JStark1994, titled The Case of the Missing Firewood. This may be pushing Rule 6 a little, but this happened when my grandfather was growing up in rural Kansas in the 40s and 50s, and is one of my favorite stories from him. Story. When my grandpa was growing up, he didn't have electricity, this being rural Kansas. What they did have was a wood-burning stove, and at one point, firewood that great-grandfather had been storing began to disappear. A thief was afoot. My great-grandfather, getting tired of the firewood disappearing, hatches a plan. Great-grandfather takes some of the logs and drills them out, leaving a cavity. He then puts some gunpowder in the cavities and plugs the holes to hide his handiwork. That night, he tells my grandpa that he would bring in the firewood. Of course, he knows what logs he's messed with. Now, this is the funny part, and I wish I knew how embellished it was, but stranger things have happened. The next day, great-grandfather is walking into town and comes across a gentleman also headed into town, and they get to talking. It turns out the gentleman is going into town to make a purchase. The item he seeks, a new stove. He says to my great-grandfather, "I don't know what they're putting in coals these days, but it destroyed my stove." No wood ever went missing again. Posted by user Revenge Tale, titled Roommate Blackmailed Us and Almost Lost Us Our Apartment, so we played dirty. So my friend and I were in our second year of college together, and were roommates. We were both transfers and going into senior year, and had been renting an apartment for the past year. The two of us had lived with 3 other people in the first year, but they graduated and moved out. The apartment had 2 rooms and a den with double doors that could be used for 1 person. We had had 2 people in each room and 1 in the den. We needed to find people to replace our old housemates, and my friend knew a couple people who were living together and wanted to move to a new place together. She talked to them and set everything up before summer, so that during the fall we would already have everything figured out. We signed the lease before summer vacation and everything seemed fine. One girl wanted to rent out the big room to herself and would pay full price for it. Let's call her Sharon. The other one would live in the den, who I will call Carrie. There would be only 4 of us instead of 5 in the coming year, which we were looking forward to. However, over the summer, Sharon started having second thoughts about living with Carrie. Apparently, while living together, they'd had some issues. Sharon called my friend and I and told us that apparently Carrie had pushed her down the stairs while they were living together, and she bought pepper spray and a taser just in case. According to Sharon, one night they thought they heard someone trying to break into their apartment and were standing at the top of the stairs listening, when Carrie told Sharon to go check it out. Sharon didn't want to go, so Carrie pushed her and Sharon fell down the stairs. We asked Carrie about this, but she said that while they heard suspicious activity and called the police, she never pushed Sharon down the stairs. My friend and I didn't know what to believe and ultimately told Sharon they'd have to work it out, since she was the one having doubts. We also told her that if she changed her mind, we'd need at least a month's notice. Sharon decided she still wanted to live with us and was okay living with the other girl, so we thought it was fine. Summer passes and fall arrives. Sharon is moving in. Carrie is planning on moving in a few days later. However, Sharon brings someone over to the apartment and starts showing her around. She apparently wanted a roommate and wanted us to sign the new person onto our lease with an addendum, but she hadn't talked to us about it before. Apparently, she still didn't feel safe with Carrie around and said she'd feel safer with a roommate. She told her potential roommate she hadn't known she'd be living with Carrie, even though the 4 of us had signed addendum to put both of them on the lease at the same time. My friend and I thought things were getting weird at this point and started feeling concerned. Unfortunately, our lease was going to expire soon and we needed to sign the lease renewal in a few days, and we couldn't get an addendum to sign the new person on until we signed the new lease. My friend and I had to let Sharon and Carrie know this in advance, and they had agreed beforehand to sign it. If we didn't sign it in time, we would have to start an entirely new lease, and the price would go up a lot, which we couldn't afford. So if we didn't sign our new lease agreement in time, we would all have to find another place to live. Since school was about to start, it would have been harder to find another place to live so quickly. This wouldn't have been an issue, but then Sharon was afraid that Carrie wouldn't sign the new person onto the lease and said she wouldn't sign the lease renewal if we didn't add her roommate first. We got ticked because she had never even asked us if we were okay with living with one more person or let us know beforehand. And now she was risking everyone's place to stay to try and make us sign someone we'd never met onto the lease. We told Sharon we couldn't sign her roommate on before renewing the lease since we had to renew it so soon, which was the apartment's rules. She kept making more demands and told us that if we didn't do what she wanted, then she wouldn't sign the lease renewal and we'd all be without a place to live. She wanted me to observe a verbal agreement as a third-party person between her and Carrie, where Carrie would agree to sign the new person onto the lease after we signed the lease renewal. I told her I wasn't comfortable with this, so this is where the fun starts. Carrie seemed nice so far, and my friend and I were really uncomfortable with how Sharon was acting. She continued to move all of her stuff in while telling us her conditions. We wouldn't agree to any of them, not only because there was no way to meet them under the rules of our apartment complex, but also because we weren't going to let this girl control us like that and make us live with someone we didn't know if we wanted to live with. However, then Sharon came up with a clever idea. She said that we could sign her off the lease with an addendum, then sign the lease renewal with Carrie, and then sign her and her roommate back onto the lease. That way she would have no chance of getting stuck on the lease without a roommate. My friend and I told her that we agreed to this, and told Carrie as well, who also agreed. My friend and I went to the office to let them know. so they wrote the addendum to take Sharon off the lease. Everyone in the apartment had to sign it in order for it to be valid. My friend, Carrie, and I signed it and waited for Sharon to sign it after telling her it was ready. She went downstairs and signed herself off the lease. After this, she came back, and my friend and I informed her that we would not be signing her back onto the lease. She got really upset. She told us that if we didn't want to live with her, she would have signed herself off anyways, but we didn't believe her. She started crying and told us that she had just finished setting up her desk. We didn't care. She had threatened 3 other people's security and place to live, as well as her potential roommates. She went outside and slammed the door. My friend and I were relieved as it was over and we wouldn't be losing our apartment. We just needed to find someone to take her place. Sharon came back in with a smug look on her face and told me that she had her mum on the phone and her mum wanted to talk to one of us. I took the phone and put it on speaker while my friend listened. Carrie went to her space and closed the door. When I answered the phone, Sharon's mum went off on me. She called me a tramp and told me to go to hell. I stayed calm and told her that I stood by the decision that we made. She told me to go to hell several more times. Then she told me Sharon had nowhere to go and I didn't give a rat's ass. I told her she was right. I didn't. Her mum told me to go to hell one more time and hung up. I gave the phone back to Sharon, who seemed surprised that I wasn't intimidated. She whispered sorry as I gave her phone back to her. Then she went to her room to take her stuff apart and start packing. Since we paid the lease in advance for our place, as per the apartment's rules, Sharon had paid to stay until the end of the month, so we let her stay until then. This gave her about 5 days to figure something else out. She made it as difficult as possible, but eventually left. Pretty sure I didn't see her on campus or anything after that, so that was the last time I saw her. The best part is that the girl who was going to be Sharon's roommate still needed a place to stay, so we signed her onto the lease and helped her find a roommate. It was actually a fairly lengthy battle, but in the end we won our apartment back. Word of advice: don't sign people onto your lease months in advance, even if they will pay for their room while they're not there. People can make a lot of changes in a few months, and if they don't know you, they won't care about screwing you over. Hope you guys enjoyed this story today. I'm gonna chuck you to outro Markee now. G'day there guys, outro Markee here. Hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed making it today. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you thought about it down below. Also, if you like memes, be sure to head on over to my second channel, Markee 2. It should be one of the sexy Australian faces on screen, the one without the flag. It's my latest and greatest creation, and I hope you like it. Also, I'd like to give a huge shout out to my channel members and Patreon subscribers. You guys do so much good for me, and the support goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I love you guys, and I appreciate all the help and support you provide me on this channel. Also, if you want to join the family, links are down in the description below, or click that join button next to the subscribe button. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed that one today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!